because the time to get excited about geothermal energy is not when they start drilling next door to you. So now I'd like to introduce an expert on alternative energy and on energy systems. He's the executive director of Life of the Land. He's been working for almost 20 years to help Hawaii get on a course of sustainable and rational energy development. So I'd like to introduce our good friend, came all the way from Oahu, Henry Curtis.
Aloha. I'm Henry Curtis, Executive Director of Life of the Land. We were founded by 15 women 2 months before the first Earth Day. I came to the organization in '94, so 24 years after it was formed. And starting in '96, I made energy a full-time occupation. Now, geothermal, I want to talk about the image of geothermal around the state. Many people have been told that geothermal will lower costs. Many people are told that it is a renewable energy. Many people are told it's just the Punatics who are fighting it. If you battle it on those grounds, you are battling it on their battlefield, in their arena. It is better to reframe the issue. And I want to talk about the 3 separate arenas that geothermal will be fought in. Obviously, one forum is the local Puna crowd. And so it was just mentioned how Bob reignited the Puna community. That's fine. At the local level, you need fire, you need passion. At the state regulatory level, you need the opposite. You need a dispassionate logic, emotionless logic to win. In between, there's another arena, and that is allying with other groups outside of Puna to expand the groups that are united opposing this. So it's not a Puna versus the entire rest of the state, but it's the entire rest of the state against a few rich developers. The idea of allying with non-traditional allies, I think, at least as far as I've been able to determine, dates back to Shakespeare. In The Tempest, one of the characters said, "Misery acquaints a man with strange bedfellows." And I want to give a couple national examples and then a Hawaii example. One national example is that there was a fight over the free trade agreements. The NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Caribbean Free Trade Agreement. Regardless of which side of that battle you're on, it's interesting that Jesse Helms, the conservative senator from North Carolina, and Ralph Nader, a traditional huge opponent of Jesse Helms, were on the same side as that in that issue. So it's an example of people who are non-traditional allies coming together and uniting around an issue. Another example is the recent disclosures on the National Security Agency and the extent of spying on Americans. Here you find the Tea Party and the left wing of the Democratic Party uniting against the center. So it's non-traditional allies and how you build it in this particular fight. An example at a local level was Wahila Ridge, which is the first energy fight I got involved in. Hawaiian Electric proposed a transmission line in 1971. It led to a lot of the early legislation, such as overhead transmission lines in neighborhoods require public hearings. Public hearings trigger contested case proceedings. It led to a number of issues that wound up being settled out in court. A community sued Hawaiian Electric, and Hawaiian Electric put it on hold for 14 years and then popped it back up in '94. And it became an intense fight, which 3 groups, the Outdoor Circle, Malama o Manoa, and Life of the Land, fought before the Board of Land and Natural Resources. And what was interesting is that we had a very strange mix of groups supporting us. We had the Green Party and the Republican Party, but not the Democratic Party. We had the neighborhood boards of Pohoiki representing wealth, Waikiki representing business, Manoa and Palolo in the neighborhood, Kalihi, the working class Filipino community, all united together opposing it. We had right to life groups, and we had groups who had fought HECO in the past and lost, and saw another opportunity to slug at the HECO. So you had a really strange group of bedfellows come together, and we fought a 6-year contested case battle before the Board of Land and Natural Resources. And on the 7th day of the evidentiary hearing, Hawaiian Electric suggested changing the route. They lost the line. But it's a group of really divergent people coming together. And therefore the question is, how can you, as a group, get allies outside of Puna that may be very non-traditional compared to who you are? Part of that is how you frame the issue. And there are a number of different ways of framing an issue. The frame depends on what you as a community wants. So for example, on Lanai and Molokai, fighting big wind, their frame is don't industrialize a rural area. And you get a certain group of people who are against industrializing open space in rural areas. Another frame would be local values or community perspectives. So for example, there are local charter schools, there's fights for sustainable agriculture as opposed to invasions of GMO. There's different groups who favor local control over the local resources. The issue is, what frame do you want, and how do you use that frame to get a large group of people to support you? And that way you're fighting it in your frame, and you're abandoning them in their frame. We can always argue costs before the regulatory body, but most people don't really want to get into that. And it's a very gnarly issue, but it's how you unite widely disparate people together in a common fight. One of the issues, and I know the issue here is save Pohoiki. I know that you all want Pohoiki saved. I don't think many people outside of Puna, certainly not on Oahu, know what that is. They don't know what the geographical area is. They don't know what the history is. They don't know why Puna people are passionate about it. And more important, many of them have never been to the Big Island, much less Puna, and have no idea why it's important to them. So part of it is tailoring the message to the people you want to reach. Speaking to them in their language with what they're familiar with. So, for example, you don't go to France and speak German. You have to speak it in whatever they're familiar with, finding out and uniting them to your issue. So, first, really telling people why you're passionate about it, and second, framing the issue so you draw a big crowd to support you. That's my organizing pitch. And then, like last time, I want to open up for questions, any questions, a wide range of questions.
Those who are intent on geothermal development, we should encourage them that geothermal and people don't mix. That a very effective strategy for geothermal development is simply to take it out to areas which are free of people and low likelihood of other forms of development being possible. So my question to you is, what do you think of this notion of being pro-geothermal, but geothermal being off to very designated areas where there's a buffer from the population?
10 years ago, I would have given your idea a lot of merit. 10 years ago, I was in favor of something called ocean thermal energy conversion, which is like geothermal of the ocean as opposed to the land. But more and more, I've come to realize that distributed generation is a lot cleaner, it's a lot closer, and eliminates the need for transmission lines. It makes energy more democratic. It supports local communities, and it takes power away from giant fossil fuel power producers. So I no longer support large central power generation stations.
Yes.
The